probably starts at a young age, this negative connotation around failure. Failure is where that's where the learning begins. But no one really cares about you. They all care about themselves, and we're consumed with ourselves. So the quicker you can kind of get over that, I think the better.
Let's go. Yeah, make it look easy. Hey, stand up.
The Ryan Hanley Show shares the original ideas, habits, and mindsets of world-class original thinkers you can use to produce extraordinary results in your life and business. This is the way.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show. We have a tremendous conversation for you today with serial entrepreneur Jeremy Delk, founder of Delk Ventures, where we discuss failure, specifically how to come back from failure. We dissect what failure means, how we emotionally rationalize the excuses that we make when we do fail. And ultimately, we dissect and build off of Jeremy's largest failure, which was losing $2 million in a 4-day period as a day trader. Jeremy's an incredible guy. This is packed with entrepreneurial insights, leadership, growth, sales, mindset. This is the kind of episode I love delivering to you guys. If this is your first time here, whether you're listening on Apple, Spotify, wherever, or watching on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button. That way you don't miss future episodes of the show. If you have a thought, a comment, an idea that you want to share, leave them in the review section of Apple, Spotify, or jump into the comments on YouTube. And I always try to draw the guests back into that conversation to get your question answered directly. Guys, I love you for listening to this show. Let's get on to Jeremy Delk. Jeremy, a big part of your story is coming back from failure. And a topic that you touch on a lot in your new book, Without a Plan, is that particular thing. So how do we fail?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the big part of the book that I wanted to really focus on, as opposed to just having opinions, is just to show like real life examples. And I think we have so many of us, and it probably starts at a young age, this negative connotation around failure, right? You know, how'd you do in school? You're graded, and just like failure is such a bad thing. And I think it's the absolute opposite, right? I think failure is where that's where the learning begins. And I try to really encourage failure, taking those chances and kind of going through it. You can't fail and do the same thing over and over. That's a definition of insanity, right? But not be defined, because we get wrapped up so much emotionally, like, what happens if I fail, right? It's this fear of failure, and usually it's what other people are going to think. And I talk about that all the time. Like, no one cares about you. Maybe your mom, but no one really cares about you. They all care about themselves, and we're consumed with ourselves. So the quicker you can kind of get over that, I think the better. But yeah, I don't try to fail, but I set these, paths out to go and see, take a chance, go through and evaluate, and not get hung up with, the actual outcome until it gets to where I want to be.
I want to pitch something to you and have you respond. So I have struggled with this idea of failure for a long time. And where I've come to it is I don't actually believe failure exists. I don't think it's a real thing. It's a construct. It's a name we give to something. Mm-hmm. I think what we're actually scared of is not failure. I'm scared of what Jeremy would think of me if this thing doesn't work out. So the way I've started positioning it is that we're afraid of our status changing in a group, whether it's a community locally or on a national stage or in our company. Where does that sit for you, that idea?
No, 100%. I mean, it's kind of the core of it. Just first, to expand on what you're saying, that you don't believe failure exists. I would, and I've said this on probably 100 podcasts and on stage, I don't really believe there's anything that's a good thing or a bad thing that happens to us. It's the actions, reactions, and the emotions that we put towards this thing that determines whether it was a good or thing, right? Good or bad thing. So me losing $2 million in a few days when I was, 20 years old, day trading, in the moment, absolute catastrophic, worst thing, biggest failure, suck at life, I shouldn't be here anymore. retrospectively in 20 years, probably one of 3 of the best things that ever happened to me, right? So you get context with time and evaluation. So that's number 1. But 2, yeah, when I say no one really cares about you other than your mother, I think that's it. We get so hung up on it. And I've had big decisions, and you think about it, and yet people want an escape, right? So there's always something that's trending and kind of going through it, but they want a distraction from themselves. So they may engage, and like you may be the talk of the town for a day, a week, but after that, it's kind of over. So the quicker you kind of, look in and say, well, what am I scared of failure, right? And if it's failure, hey, if I bet my house on it and now my kids are homeless, that's a real fear, and that's something that's real. But if it's because of, what they may say about you, that's the piece. And I think, unfortunately, most people aren't comfortable enough in their own skin, and they put so much value in that. And the reality is, the opinions that you get from other people, that'll never work. I mean, they're saying that about themselves, not you. It just happens to be about you, but that's how they actually feel and internalize it. So it gets easier with time once you've proven it to yourself a couple times. You've taken some steps, and hey, it was scary, but I pulled it off. But yeah, I agree with that construct completely.
I love that there's no such thing as good or bad. I think that is a wonderful construct to hold in your head, a wonderful framework or mindset, because it gives you power, right? If there's no good or bad, it's basically wins and lessons, right?
It's an event. All it is an event.
Yeah, and you can reframe that event in any way. I had a woman, Deanne DeMeo is her name. She's an artist. She's a jazz musician, and I had her on the show a few weeks ago. And 3 years ago, she lost her 23-year-old son, passed away. Fucking awful. I mean, I literally started to come to tears as she's telling the story. And she said for the first year, she could barely move. And then all of a sudden, her producer started bringing her back into the studio a little bit. And now, 3 years later, she has this wonderful album that's getting national play on all these radio stations, more than she's ever gotten before, because she was able to take this horrifying, awful thing that, God, you just don't even wish on your worst enemy. And she was able to start to reframe it as, I'm going to keep living for my son, for his memory, and I'm going to do the work that I told him I was going to do. And now she's, she even said she's more energized than she's ever been before. So like, you could sit and wallow in that moment, which is awful, and no one would question you, right? Hey, you lost a child. There really isn't a worse thing. Yeah. And instead, she was able to reframe that and turn it into passion and positivity that has amplified her career and her soulfulness to a level that she didn't even know was possible. And I think these types of conversations with people like you who've been through these failures, like Deanne, I hope what it shows people is that it's simply just what's going on between our ears. And if we can spend a little bit of time and reframe these things, man, sky's the limit on the other side of something.
It is. And one thing I try to give an example that anyone can apply to it. Like, that's devastating. Like, I agree. There's probably not an event that could happen that would be more catastrophic. But, we have all, point at a crowd, anyone, 1 million people, everyone, just point to a random person. We've all experienced trauma, loss, and these things. And we've all probably said to ourselves, like, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. Everyone has those 2 or 3 things that this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. Humans innately are pretty advanced species, right? And we all, always have the self-protective properties that go there. So, and I don't believe in looking at the past and dwelling in the past, but we really, chine out and tune out most of these big traumatic events, and just don't ever think about them again. I think there's a massive amount of power. I know there's a massive amount of power in looking back at that, not dwelling on the event, but the fact that, you're here now listening to your podcast, and I lost my job yesterday, or whatever the thing is, and it's worse, but now I've gotten through it, whatever it is. The bank took my house, or whatever the thing that happened to you or your family, you're still alive and you've gotten through it. So as opposed to blocking that out, go back. Because when I lost all that money, and when I made the decision to go out and start Delk Enterprises 20 years ago. I was making more than I was on Wall Street, very successful, and I went out and made $6,000 my first year in business. I never would have had the balls to do it. But you know what? I looked back and said, well, I lost $2 million in 4 days trading, and I got back. So what's the worst? Can it be worse than that?
Yeah.
And I think that was the most powerful thing that literally gave me the courage to go and do it, because like, fuck, it can't be any worse than that, and I'm still here breathing. So kind of going through it. So I don't think people should look back and dwell on things, but we've all had those events that are obviously much less catastrophic than losing a child, but we've all had that. We've lost a parent, we've lost a thing, a job, whatever it is, and we're very resilient as a species. And I think if you can go back and look at those pieces, that gives you courage within yourself to say, you know what, I can do this, and I can take that, and that's worth taking it. Because I would argue that the fear of failure it's debilitating to so many people. And I always ask this question when I hear the response, like, well, you know, what if I do this and these things happen? I always, you know, rebuttal, well, what if you don't do it, right? And what if you did do it and these things happen, right? What's that opportunity cost? And kind of look at it from that perspective.
I love that you use the word resilient, because one of the things that I talk a lot about with the entrepreneurs that I coach is building resiliency into their business, right? You can take as many risks as you want as long as you have an understanding of the resilient points in your business. And one of the first things that I started to realize when I started doing this work was most people do not give themselves enough credit for how resilient they actually are. They think, well, I'm not strong enough, or I don't have enough this, or whatever they think their limitation is. Mm-hmm. But let's think through some things that happened in your past. Tell me about what happened. And you're like, wow, you did that. You survived that. You got through that moment. You were able to maintain your business through 2008, 2009, or the .com crisis or whatever. Like, you got through that. Like, wow, that's incredible. And they're like, and you, like, sometimes you see them, they're like, they've never even gone back in their mind and processed how resilient they actually are. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So I think one of the questions I wanted to dive in with you came out of a previous interview I had and some feedback I got from that, which was I had an entrepreneur on and who was talking a lot about the business and what they had done, and it was all incredible stuff. And I got a comment. It was actually a DM, so no one can find it. But the person said, you know, that's all great advice, except that person doesn't have kids. They don't know what it's like to get a phone call in the middle of a business meeting that their kid's puking all over the classroom, or something happened with the buses and you got to end your day at 3:00 because they need to be picked up. Like, you have kids, yet you're highly successful as an entrepreneur. What do you think some of the things are? And maybe talk to the entrepreneurs with parents out there a little bit. Like, what are those differences that you see, the primary differences, and how are you successful? I don't want to say despite, because that kind of puts kids in a negative light, but when you're operating with children, it is just a different world. There are just certain realities to your responsibility. How are you able to navigate that world? Because I think a lot of people say, well, geez, I'm in my late 30s or my early 40s. I got kids who are still not, completely self-sufficient at this point. Like, I don't know if I can be an entrepreneur at this point. I don't know if I can make that jump. What do you say to those individuals?
Yeah, I mean, it adds a massively dynamic layer that definitely complicates things or creates opportunity, right? I mean, one of the reasons, first off, I think you don't choose to become an entrepreneur. Like, you are one or you're not. You've just chosen to take the stamp and be one, right? But I think innately you're built and bred to be one of these, because it's a masochistic kind of. Yeah. I don't know why we do it sometimes, it's horrible, but we love it. Yeah. But for me, one of the early drivers, before I even knew what having kids were like, and I'm like, I've got a 6-month-old. I just look at here. I've got so the struggle is real, guys.
Yeah, the struggle is real. For those on audio, who are just listening on audio, he's got the classic baby drill strains on his shoulder.
He's teething really bad, so I just got a black shirt. Not a good choice today. But one of the reasons, again, this was before kids. I wanted to be an entrepreneur because I thought what it would be like. And one of those freedoms were like, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur so I can make my own hours and work when I want to. Obviously that's bullshit because like you work when you have, like you just always work when entrepreneur, so it never stops. But having that flexibility is massive. But then you just get creative on when you go. And I think the positivity of being an entrepreneur with kids far outweighs, yeah, of course you got to be flexible, you got to move things around, but what I've allowed my kids to be able to see, and like just from a work ethic standpoint, right? Like, you know, my son, I talk about initiative and things like that. When I'm putting my son to bed, he sees me carrying my laptop to bed because I will work, like hang out with my wife, and then she goes to sleep, and then like my best work, I've solved the world's problems between 11 and 4 a.m. I'm just crushed life, right? I go through there, and like there's no interruptions, right? It's very quiet. But from a lesson for my son is, you know, who's daddy's boss? Well, he doesn't have a boss. Well, who's making him go and take his laptop to go? No one's making me, but that's the drive and the ambition and that you know, mindset that you can kind of teach by example at a very, very young age. But again, entrepreneurship positively gives you so much more flexibility. Like we're leaving here tomorrow morning and going to our lake house for the long weekend. I've got a podcast tomorrow that I'll do from the lake, and then we'll go down and I'll take my kids, you know, wake surfing and tubing and all that. So it gives you a massively much more flexibility. But yeah, you have these other not interruptions, but it's just life, and your life changes too. I talk to so many of these young entrepreneurs who are on social media, and they're just, I mean, their expectation of like, I'm an overnight success, 22 years in the making, right? They just have this false sense of what it is, but it's okay. Like, and I don't try to change them because my goals at 22 and 25 were way different than 25 to 30 and, 30, and I'm 43, right? So it's okay. You learn and kind of go through, but people have to go through their own journeys with it.
Yeah, I used to. So I just exited from a company in November of last year, since it's just almost a year now. But in our hiring process, when we got to 20-ish people, actually way before that, I removed myself because I found I'm terrible at hiring, only because all I do is pitch the company the whole time. I'm like awful at that. I'm just like, this place is amazing. Here's all the reasons why you should want to work here. And my team was like, whoa. Why don't we step in? But they were like asking me for guidelines. And this thing came out of me that I had never verbalized before, and I don't even know where it came from, but it was like, I want people that walk with a limp. And they were like, what do you mean? And I said, like, we want to find people. They don't have to be, I'm not talking about age. I'm saying that have like been through some stuff, that have like experienced something, because when you first get into the game, whether it's corporate world or you're an entrepreneur, right? It's all pie in the sky. It's all, everything's going to be great. Here's all the, to make all this money, and all that is wonderful. But it's not until like your experience, right? You're day trading, you're making shit tons of money, life's great. And then all of a sudden, wham, right? Yeah. And now, before that experience, there were probably all these holes in your game, right? Then you have that experience and you get to reflect on it, and it was awful, right? But a lot of those experiences, with those maybe failures is probably how the nomenclature, but lessons is probably how we're better positioned. You start to fill in those holes and start to be able to see around corners that others can't. So it's almost surrounding yourself, even if you're early in the game, regardless of age, with people who, I like to say, walk with a limp. That mentorship piece is huge. Was there a person like that in your life? Is there a person? Is there someone who do you have an inner circle? Like, how do you stay grounded? How do you stay connected to others who push in the same direction that you're pushing in? Yeah,
so a lot of stuff there. One, from an investment thesis, I won't invest in a founder that hasn't been through a cycle. Doesn't mean you have to be a bust, but everything's great until it's not. But true leaders, true people that can kind of get through it, it's how they react and how they manage through crisis, right? I think the whole idea of like you get paid equal to the amount of pain you can take and how big the problem you can solve. Like that's it. If you can solve a really big problem and handle a lot of stress and pain, you're going to probably do pretty well. So I never had mentors per se, like in a coaching component, and I do some coaching now too. I was always more just I love to try to consume content. So, I've got, Dan Kennedy. There's a ton of mentors that I've had via just reading content,
Yeah, yeah.
reading books, and that type of thing. So that's been it for me, and I enjoy the learning piece. That's why I've been invested in so many industries. It's I think I could make an impact, and there was a play there, but largely it was I was curious, and I use and let that curiosity drive the interest in that learning piece.
I would love for you to dig in a little more into this, like having gone through a cycle. Like when you meet someone, how do you, and you're evaluating them for an investment. Let's take that framework, right? And you're starting to talk with them and learn more about them. Like, what are some of the characteristics that you're looking for? What are some of the pieces to their personality or the way they work or the way they present themselves that are indicators to you? And not that I am advocating that people present themselves in these ways if they don't actually have this, but what are some of the things that you see pop out that you go, ooh, this is someone who will sustain. This is someone who will push through when things get bad or can make the hard decision when it needs to be made. What are some of the filters that you use?
Well, it's a pretty simple framework. The first comes to, their implied or actual vulnerability and authenticity of what their story is. I think I can sell anything to anybody. I'm a pretty good sales guy. But I also will tell you where the landmines are because I don't know. So the first thing that will just kill any deal is someone comes into me and they have all the answers. They're either just lying or they're just naive enough to know, right? And that's one. And that they will learn, but it just won't be with me. So they're going to go have and get some marks on them and come back, and then now they've kind of went through it. Secondly, like you mentioned how you are, I'm probably like that as well. Like I'm a glass half full. I'm just very positive, can figure out a way how to do it, but that's not the best for hiring because you're basically I guess you would have gotten this feedback that everyone that you interview, you bring the best out of them because of your energy, you're going that, and you're bringing the best out of them, and that's the absolute what you want. One, but two, you want someone different than you because if they have a bunch of yous, like you're a leader, you're an entrepreneur, like I don't know details. I don't give a fuck about the details, bro. Like I wrote a book about Without a Plan, and that's how I lived for 20 years. I don't think you have to get so, drawn out because it never works that way. Like I built, 500 company. I mean, I've done a lot of stuff. None of it has worked out how we thought it would be. We've had an idea of where we wanted to go, but I'm a big preacher of just getting started and taking that step because you're going to know so much more by Q4 or, Q1 the next year than you are right now. So why try to predict the future? Get an idea and then stop and go. And I think over planning sometimes is a negative because when you get to that decision making, that fork in the road, you're kind of destined to say, oh, well, this is what we said we're going to do, so we'll stick to it. So that's how I can figure out a cycle and they're being authentic. But the other piece is just kind of saying, like, this is where I'm not good at. I would rather know that from an investor, or this is what scares me, right? So many people, and I'm talking more on this investment pitch piece, but so many people want to de-risk it for an investor because that's what they think an investor wants to hear. If you have it already figured out and you have all the answers, I fucking can't help you. Go get money from someone else. Like Delk Enterprises, the subline is strategic capital. I solve problems with resources. Sometimes they're financial. A lot of times they're financial. A lot of times it's using my digital marketing team or my legal or whoever it is. And that's the best way. And that's where I talk about vulnerability and authenticity. Going into a job interview, going into an investor pitch, telling them your fears is so telling and it just connects. Still, it doesn't mean I'm going to invest in you, but now I believe you because you're like telling me like what keeps you up at night? Nothing. Everything's great. You're fucking lying or naive and you don't understand it. Yeah. But hey, what keeps me up at night is like I built this thing, jumped off the cliff and built the wings for the plane while we're kind of going down. And I've got traction, but now I need infrastructure behind it. Okay, I'm not good at that. I'm a good leader here, a vision, but I can't put this up. Okay, that's a problem that either I or someone can solve, and you've shown a massive amount of vulnerability and authenticity to admit and understand there's value in understanding what you're good at and not good at, right? I know numbers innately, and I can just see balance sheet, but I will never do books, right? But I can look at financials and understand what they mean. So that's the piece where I I talk so much about just being authentic and being vulnerable. It just gets you to where you need to be helped, because that's what you're going to. You're going to an investor, you're going to a job, you want to be part of an organization. Let's leave the investment out. You want to be part of an organization. Talk to them about like, hey, these are my strengths and what I want to be able to help, and I think I can add value here. But I love this organization because, you know, I think it can help me overcome these things, right? So that just, you build more of a relationship, because, you know, business is very personal. And I think sometimes people try to separate that too much.
Guys, if you're not taking notes, this is where you hit the pause button and you slide your finger back about 3 or 4 minutes and listen to that section again, because if you are looking specifically to raise money, but also if you're just looking to find talent or bring in someone into your organization, I can say this works just as well for trying to find a strategic hire. If you're looking for an A-class player, and you come in and you just tell that person all the amazing things that are going on, they are going to know that you're full of shit, right? That person wants to know, what am I getting myself into? And a lot of times an A-class player is completely okay with you and expects you to have holes. They expect you to have holes. That's why you're reaching out to them. But if you bring them in and you're like, we're going to kill it, and our, you know, MRR is going to be this and blah, 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 and they're going to go, I don't know. And it's funny. I did a bunch of, or have and do a bunch of angel investing. I love getting in early in companies and helping in the same way. I don't have a venture company, and nor probably will I ever, but I do enjoy that piece. And I have a group of friends we all bring each other in on deals. And we came in on this deal and we're listening to these guys, and it was a good idea, and they were full of energy and seemed very smart, except they spent at least half of their 20-minute pitch talking about all these made up numbers. I mean, it's Excel gobbledygook. You know what I mean? I'm like, I can put whatever conversion rate into your chart just like you can. I can put whatever market share piece you think you're going to get into this chart and make these numbers come out the back end. Like, this is just an Excel sheet. Like, how many things have you sold? What things are breaking? What, you know, where's your actual retention? Like it, if you just, like, I feel like there is this false sense of, I need to make Delk Ventures feel like I'm this amazing thing and everything's amazing and we're going to crush it, or they're not going to be interested. And it's like, the really good strategic investors, as you just described, they don't want to hear that shit. You know what I mean?
And it's going to fucking blow up.
Yeah.
It's going to blow up. If you like, it's just like dating, dude. Like, if you, like, it's anything, marriage, like, you have to just, this is how I am. We will be great together, or we won't. Let's figure out the won't before we get going. Bezos, great example. Bezos had a very distinct plan. I'm going to lose money for the better part of 20 fucking years. So that's going to eliminate a huge amount of his investment pool, a massive amount. Like, that's just not the horizon. That's not in our fund or not our thesis, whatever. But there would not be an Amazon if he tried to, you know, bait and switch someone on a 4-year horizon. They would have said, we're going to take over the company. It's going to go through. But because he got his early investors and, like, started bringing money on, they bought into the vision, and that's where you kind of go through. And that's the piece where you need to go. And I think that, again, it's all about vulnerability. Like, hey, this is why we're going to go there. Hey, we're going to hire this great growth marketing person because we've hacked it together and we don't know what the fuck we're doing. And we've done something. So that's showing positivity. Like, hey, if you come in with your great skills, what can you do for it? Tell us that way. And then it gets there. Or most importantly, like, a bad hire is 10 times worse than one good hire. It's so bad getting a hire wrong for everyone. No one wants to do that. Like, you don't want to change someone's life. They leave a job and, like, let someone go. It's a lose-lose for everybody. So getting to that point of not finding if it's a fit, whether it's vision, culture, skill set, whatever, getting there early or before it happens it's invaluable to the business.
How do we do that intentionally? Like, you're sitting there, or I'm, you know, someone's listening to this and they have that idea or they're in that phase. As we've discussed, I think the natural reaction is everything's amazing. Is it just taking a step back? Is it, you know, how do we get over the fear, which I do think is real, because I think it does come back to status as well, of, man, I really want Jeremy to like me. Man, I really want him to invest in me. Like, how do we get past that fear of being vulnerable, of sharing the warts, of being okay with that? Is it just being confident in ourselves?
Yeah, I do. I think it's being confident, and you just feel connection, right? I mean, I'm telling you, like, so the book is a lot of business stuff, but after I wrote the first draft, I threw it away because I felt a bit disingenuous because it was only the business shit. And now it's just as much like marriage, life, I mean, that kind of advice. And not at least advice. A lot of times it's shit don't fucking do. But it was just a complete transparency. Like, you either love me or hate me, but fucking that's me. And you're entitled to your opinion, but I just wanted to put it out there. And the piece that, was so telling for me on, like, I'll use like a relationship component. Like, I struggled a ton, right? Like, I lost my dad when I was young, and I went through a good part of my life where I wouldn't let anyone in, right? So I never really had any true connection. It's a great way not to get hurt, but a really shitty way to actually live, right? Because you don't really have that true connection. And when, through a bunch of therapy and, work that I've done on myself, the feeling and the connection you get when you can be leveled by like a partner, like your wife, with that ultimate vulnerability is scary as fuck, because your world could be crushed, but the connection that you feel is so much richer, right? And I think if you've got that with either a spouse, a great friend, that you just feel like it's so comfortable, if you can mimic that with an employer, or with an employee, or with a staff, and not like go into your personal kind of details, but like, hey, this is where we want to go, and I'm a visionary, I want to do this, and this is where I'm really good. I'm awesome at this piece. Here's a piece of the pie. We need to fill all these other pieces. We have this guy that's a great person in this role. We have this female that's in this role. She kills it, and this is the sliver that we really need as a company. That level of, vulnerability from you, it's going to be immediately reciprocated from that person, because now they're going to say, wow, he's actually, telling me the truth and telling me like where the opportunity is. And that person is going to, if they're honest and vulnerable, we're going to tell you, hey, I can do it, or I can't do it, or whatever. But that's how you build a culture, right? Of like, we are all in this together, and I do this really well, they do this, and now we really see that team cohesive piece of, hey, this is my responsibility because Jeremy can't do that, and I can.
Yeah.
But I can't go and raise the money, but Delk can. Like, that's the piece where you can really get fired up.
Oh, dude, there's two things in there. So you won't be able to see it because it's back here, but one of my audience members made, he's a woodworker, and he made this little piece of wood, and it's got 3 letters on it, GNF, and it stands for give no fucks, right? So we operate by a GNF philosophy, which means trying to cultivate people into exactly who they are and being okay with that, whatever that looks like. And and putting that back to the business piece, a huge turning point for me as a leader was when I started becoming more vulnerable with my team with the things that I just simply wasn't good at, right? Mm-hmm. And you can be strong, confident, and be vulnerable at the same time. And what I found was when I started opening up a little bit about, like, one of them asked me a question one time. I don't know where I was mentally, and, we're in full growth mode, early startup. We got about 7 people, everyone's got every hand in every department. We're just trying to get shit done and build the business. And one of them asked me a question, and I was like, I don't know. And she kind of looked at me, and I was like, I don't know the answer to the question that you're asking me. Like, I don't know what to do. You know what I mean? Like, It's not an area that I have any experience in or any expertise in. I think it was to do with accounting. And she looked at me, and I was like, I need you to figure this out. And like, what about, like, for me, again, this is a turning point moment for me. Her shoulders rolled back, her head came up, her eyes got wide. And it was like the fact that I had given that I had, one, shared with her that I didn't know what to do about the problem, and 2, that I had given it to her to solve.
And entrusted her to do it, yeah.
Dude, she came back with 3 options that were incredible, and she's like, here's the one I think we should take, but if you don't like this one, we got this, and blah, 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 and she's pros and cons. It was more than I could have ever asked for if I had just been like, here, do this, right? Mm-hmm. And And then she owned the problem, solved the problem for us, and it was a better solution. It wasn't anything that I probably would have ever even thought of. And it ended up working out great and whatever. And it was wonderful. And it was like, if I didn't, I like when I reflected on that, I do a lot of self-reflection, and a lot of that comes from counseling that I've done as well, is like, I was like, oh my God, like, I don't have to have all the answers. Just because I'm the quote unquote entrepreneur or boss or leader doesn't mean that I have to, nor does anyone even expect me to have all the answers to all the problems. And that is, I think that's the turning point that happens, like you said, after they've been through one cycle. I think that is a relatively common insight that leaders who have been through this struggle start to get, and is a major turning point for successful organizations. Does that relate to you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it just, I'll kind of give you another tip that I use in a business that, so you had 7, when you exited, how big was your team?
27.
27. Okay. So I'm just a personal guy. I love being personal, but I suck at names. Like I just don't.
I'm with you there.
I'm the fucking
I
worst.
need whoever that guy was on Veep who stood behind her and like told her all this stuff. And then,
whisper through.
I need that guy. I need one of those people in my life.
Well, it's so bad. Like we're in a small town in Lexington, Kentucky, and like it's a small town. But I meet people, and I'm nice. I'll talk to anybody. I don't care. But like I'm out with my son. Sometimes we're going out, and like and I see someone looking at me like, okay, they know me. So I was like, hey, what's up, man? How's it going? Whatever. And then my son's always like, who's that? Like I have no clue, buddy. I don't know. I'm the worst. But I care. It's not like I don't care to know. It's like fuck. Hey, and then I'll usually talk to him, and then I'll put it together. But for the business piece, one of the businesses that we sold a few years ago, we scaled from like 0 to I don't know, like 50-something million run rate, high profitable, great thing. It was a couple hundred people, 150 people, and we would go through, and now you've got leadership, you've got different things, and we're going to like monthly board meetings, and some of the shit that I was hearing was just like, oh, the warehouse, and like just fucking drama that I would never tolerate, and you would never tolerate in the small community. You're like, dude, Ryan, fuck this, figure this out, go, and you would just squash it. But when you start to put layers in a business, all of a sudden you're too important or whatever, and you lose the approachability. At least it happened to me. And I'm the most approachable. Well, I don't know. To me, in my heart, I feel like maybe I'm not approachable all the time, but to me, I will talk to anyone if I got time. Not with my kids interrupted, I'll be happy to talk. And I was like, dude, I can't and will not tolerate this kind of bullshit. Like it's just dumb. Like these problems, like we need to have like, hey, we can't meet the scale. Like real problems, let's bring that on, but not this like mundane bullshit. So I created, and I encourage anyone that either feels disconnected or whatever. I had one of my tech guys create like a little intranet portal where it was, anonymous, no IP tracking, whatever, and you could make a comment, a request, a complaint, whatever. And I was going to address them. Now, the first time we got like 20 or 30 of them, I remember I was in Moscow for a conference, and I did this for 2 months. And the first time it was like just dumb shit, but I read everyone. I did like a Loom recording, but it was me on there like, hey, here's the question, why is Jeremy bald? Like silly stuff, but like I read every single one. And what it did was, while I'm not speaking directly to that person, I think part of the people are like, oh, he's going to screen him, or he's only going to, and I fucking read all of them. Some of them were just nonsensical. But by month 3, and I would just make a snap call, like, hey, so we need an extra fridge because someone's like messing up the thing in the break room. Cool. All right. On this thing, Dana, buy 2 fridges, have them there tomorrow. So I was just action. Like, if I can take it. Or also, hey, why are we doing this? Because other thing is leaders, like, we have it all planned out in our head. We know what we're doing. And sometimes we don't let, line team, they don't know. It's not because we're not trying to keep anything from them. It's just like, you don't have that piece. So, hey, I've got this and I don't understand why we do this. Well, if with the information it makes no fucking sense. But let me tell you where we're going. And what it did is it gave me a platform to have anyone without fear of, retribution, any type of getting management, it completely, they could buy department, it could be non-department, it can be whatever. It gave them a platform to connect with me. And by going through and reading every single one, by month 3 and 4, it was down to like 7 or 10 requests or notes. all the bullshit, because they kind of called my bluff. Like, hey, is this guy just going to read everything? I read everything. And it was the most impactful thing that I did for my business at that stage, because some of them were great ideas. Like, hey, we're doing this in, pick on shipping. We're doing this in shipping and it's taking 2 hours long. I'm like, well, that's fucking stupid. We want to do this. I'm like, well, fucking, that's a great idea. Do it. And it's the same thing that happened in your example with someone that you're probably with leadership and gave her that kind of the hee-ho. But dude, sometimes the greatest ideas can come from not where you're expecting them, and you can get information, but creating that access where you are approachable. And that was a great way for me to do it, because you always can't sit down with somebody. You can't always do one. Just time doesn't give that. But this was a way that you could go through for a month, submit these things, and I would go through and take an hour and a half. I love that idea. Record it and send it out company wide. It was a great way. But the lesson is being vulnerable and showing that you care and you don't know the answers, or go through. And I did that. Sometimes I didn't have the answer. Like, I don't know, but we'll figure this out as a problem. So just off the cuff, no prep, just kind of going to it. It was the best hour I did a month.
Oh, I completely agree. I actually picked up, I didn't do that, although I love that idea. And we'll probably use that in the future for different endeavors, because I think it's phenomenal. I actually picked up from a company that I invested in. A founder would do for his team, every Monday he would do a vision meeting, and he would do a Loom, right? And he's like, look, like, it's hard to get everyone. I don't want to waste your time. Another 30-minute meeting where we talk about whatever. So he would do a 10 to 15-minute Loom where he would talk about what new development updates they pushed out, what was going on with sales. He would talk about retention numbers. So he would have like things he would report on, and then he would finish the call with talking about the vision, talking about, different things that are coming up. He would talk about different stuff that was going on. He would even give shout outs to employees. And I would watch these things and I'd be like, Jesus, if I worked for this guy, I'd be pretty jacked up after watching this. Like, what I mean? Because he would pull out, hey, we're struggling with retention this month. We're missing on this. If you're in that department, reach out to me if I can help, blah, blah, blah. So he was doing all these calls to action. I was like, and he did it every Monday, and it would come out in the afternoon, and people would watch it at all different times. He said the amazing part is people were going home from work, because you can see with Loom when people watch the video. Right. He's like, people would be watching the video from home. So they would bookmark it, go through their work their whole day, do their thing, eat dinner. He's like 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night is when like half the people in the company would watch the video. And I was like, man, and I started doing that, and that worked really well. That was towards the end before I exited, but that was a really good thing. And I just think to your point, I think you said it, like, oftentimes we have all the mission, vision, all these amazing things that are coming or that we're currently doing. We have them in here, and we are so bad, maybe at sharing with the leadership team, but when it gets down below that, we're really bad at getting to Sally in accounting or Johnny in customer service, right? We're so bad at getting that in front of them.
And then sometimes it's even worse. Like it's got a massive net positive by getting people in power, getting people on there, but we know as leaders that it's just lack of, thoughtfulness and just moving at a million miles that we're not thinking about it. But sometimes it's really perceived the other way. Well, I'm not important enough to know this, or they don't want me to know this, or which is fucking bull. Like, why would I not? You're all part of the team, but that's that mindset they go through. So the reasons to do it are so much more impactful. So
you talked about your kid giving you crap for talking to everybody on the street. My kid does the exact same thing, because I'm the same way. Like, I see somebody, we got a puppy, so we'll go walk around the neighborhood, and so-and-so will come out, we'll start shooting, and my kid will be like poking me in the side, like, Dad, come on. Like, he wants to keep moving, and I'm rapping or whatever. And I coach his baseball team, and after the game, I'm always rapping with parents or other coaches, and he's like, and I'm like, I just looked at him one day, and I'm like, look, you're a coach's kid. So this is what it is. I don't know what to tell you, right? I like to talk about, I don't know. But you do this thing that I think is pretty interesting, and I'd love for you to just talk about this 4-trip challenge, this time that you spend with your kids. Talk to me a little bit about what this is, where this came from, and maybe what the impact has been with you connecting with your children.
Yeah, so I stole it from a doctor that I knew back in Louisville, and he started doing it, and I hope everyone steals it from me. Let's face it, especially we talk about entrepreneurship and kids and things, but entrepreneurs, it's, 100-hour week isn't unheard of, and you're just doing a ton. And I think moms probably have the toughest job in the world and get like not enough credit. But, just innately, mothers are typically the nurturers, dads are doing their different roles. You're coaching baseball, but there's just a different level. So you're going on trips, like my wife hates it. Like we're going tomorrow, like I'll pack in the morning and be done. She's got everything lined up, and like, it's like, and it's good. We're like yin and yang, but we just kind of go and figure it out. But she takes care of the entire family to kind of pull it together. So mom always innately had those nurturing type of components. And I've got 3 kids, 10-year-old son, 5-year-old daughter, and a 6-month-old son. And I started doing it with my son. First trip with him was Legoland. My daughter, we went to Barbie World in Dallas this past year. And I called it a 4-trip challenge because you've got, I've heard the stat, you have like, 14 summers with your kids, right? They don't remember the first 2, then they kind of go off to college. So we have such a small amount of time to spend with our kids. And we're all doing summer vacation. We've got travel, baseball, different sports. So I started doing this thing where for each kid, I do a solo trip with them, and they can pick wherever they want to go. And it's 5 years, 10 years, and I will do a 15 and a 20 year, right? Because then they're 21, they're in college. But the amount of connection that I've built there, I mean, other than the daddy-daughter dance I do with my daughter that she just absolutely loves, like she remembers those things. We go like twice whenever it's in town. But, it's just crazy, right? Whether it's just getting on the airplane together with you just one-on-one, and the intention, especially if they have siblings, they're always competing for attention, or you've got your mom or your distraction, and I don't do any work. I just kind of go through, and it's, what do you want to do? It's like almost like a yes trip. And anyone can do it, right? I mean, it's 4 trips, right? So it doesn't have to be super extravagant, but kind of going and saving up a little bit of money for each kid for the year, you can actually do a pretty nice little deal. And yeah, I just can't talk enough about it. My son went from Legoland at 5 to 10. We did Dubai. He loves cars and so like that, and he's an adventure guy. And I've done a lot of business over there. And all these are on my feed. The Barbie trip with my daughter, and I'm just telling you, it's the greatest thing I've done. Like just the relationship that you build there, and like the conversations, and just because it's focused. It's not going to, like, the daddy-daughter dancers are great, but that's one night, they feel special. But I mean, it's just memories that they are going to remember forever. And more selfishly, you are, right? You have those things that are just like so much. It's just great. And they're looking forward to it. Like my daughter's like already thinking about where she wants, and obviously it's going to change a million times because she's got 5 years to go. But it's that type of thing. Like, wow, what am I going to do for my dad trip? And like that piece. So it's a massive amount of fun.
Dude, I appreciate you so much. I learned a hard lesson. I'm divorced. I learned a hard lesson on if your home life, if you're an entrepreneur in particular, but really for anybody, but I think this is especially true for entrepreneurs. If you don't have a foundation at home that's stable, that's filled with love and connection, I mean, not every day is going to be good. We're humans. Mm-hmm. But that long-term stability, that care and compassion, if you're not nurturing that, your success in business, one, is going to be limited by that. Absolutely. And two, it's never going to feel the same, right? When you can come home from, I had a pretty important speaking gig that I did in April, and I talked to my kids about it, and they saw me preparing for it, and they watched me practicing, and they heard, saw me, working on notes and different stuff. And man, when I came home, frankly, I didn't even know they were watching and listening, but like, when I came home, they were so excited. Dad, how did it go? Da, 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 da. They're asking me all these questions. Can we see pictures? Can we see whatever? And like, not about the business thing. It was more that I was like, I'm doing better. Like, I'm doing better with my home foundation because they're not like, oh, Dad's gone again. They were excited because they knew when I got back, I was going to be present and I was going to care about them. And I just think what you just described is a phenomenal way of cultivating that continued connection with your family, despite all the pulls that you have on you as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, for sure. And, we share that, and I talk about this in the book. You hit a bunch of things that I talk about. I'm divorced as well. And that's probably a whole other podcast, but I think I didn't have, like, my ex-wife and I, we didn't fight really. It was actually, but we weren't growing. We grew way apart, not together. And like, just, if that doesn't work, you don't. But we didn't have that love, passion, connection. And then I think that's the example. Like, so it's not even like you're in a bad relationship and you're always yelling around the kids. It was the inverse, but they never saw that. We're with my wife now, like, we're having water fights, and it's, again, not always great, but seeing that love and connection, that sets the example for what they're going to look for in a partner, and what the expectation of love in a relationship is. But two, divorce fucking sucks. And I have friends that go through it, and I always, like, my advice is, dude, if you can figure it the fuck out, do it, because it sucks for the kids' piece. But dude, I took being with my kids 100% of the time. Now we have like the shared custody, like 2-2-3. So I took that for granted, because you come home, you work, and your kids are always there, and you're not present. Where now, I would argue that and feel pretty firm that I'm a much better, much more present dad. Like, I'm doing drop-offs, I'm doing these things, because now it's the expectation. Like, it's not, now you have limited time. Now you've got to do it. So don't do that. So I guess the lesson is, like, oh, you're not divorced and you're going through it, but don't take it for granted, man, because it goes by so fucking quick. And you're right. The kids remember that. Like, the kids know that I walk when I'm walking my daughter into school every day, where I'm there at pickup or on the practices, like, they know that shit. Like, and I talk about this, like, when it was, like, shitty to hear, but I remember my son said to my wife, my current wife, Maggie, because I don't miss dinner. Like, I'm home for dinner. I'm all those things. It wasn't me, and it wasn't that I was that busy. I was that busy with work, but I wasn't happy in my marriage and stuff. And like, my son made a comment to my wife. This is 3-4 years ago. Like, it's weird. Like, Daddy was never home for dinners and stuff, and now he doesn't miss it.
Yeah.
Like, maybe one I've missed in 5 years, and they fucking notice, and we can tell ourselves where the bullshit we want to tell ourselves, that, oh, they're too young. But dude, I'm telling you, they fucking are they're sponges, and they may not say anything, they may not do anything, but they do know. So if it's a lesson.
I couldn't agree with you more. Dude, you're what you just described is basically my experience to a T. I'm in 2-2-3, same exact experience. I had two moments with my kids that were very eye-opening to me recently. So I've been dating a woman for a while now, and she's wonderful, and we have a great connection, and there may be a future there. But my son said to me, Dad, like, I feel like every time I walk away, you guys are kissing. And I was like, well, yeah, I guess. I don't know. I was like, he's like, but like, I go, I'm not like trying to shove it in your face, and I don't know, whatever. I was like, it's not like we're like making out or whatever, but just maybe like a kiss or affection. I'm showing affection.
Affection, yeah.
And he said, you and Mom never did that. And it like really hit me how much, because he was young. My older son was young when we got divorced, and it like hit me that how much he picked up on the fact that even though we were married and together, we weren't sitting next to each other on the couch. We weren't hugging each other in the kitchen. We weren't showing affection, and that was new to him. So that's one. Two, to your point of they're listening to everything we say. The other day, so I tend to be just like you, very positive, glass half full, let's go, push through, gritty, all that stuff. I'm constantly, I talk to my kids like they're adults. I do not believe in talking to your children like they're dumb. They're not dumb. In many cases, their curiosity and sponge-like brain, to use your word, is actually deeper and richer than our own. They're listening to every friggin' word we say, the way we say it, who we say it to. And I had this moment the other day where I was talking about something and I was being kind of negative, and my kid flips on me and literally regurgitates something back to me that I had said to him about baseball like a few months earlier. And I'm driving, I literally like did this move where I was like, whoa. And I said, thanks, bud. I needed to hear that. In my head, I'm going, holy shit, he listened to that? Like, he was actually like taking that thought in. Like, oh my God. It was a really wonderful moment. But dude, I want to be respectful of your time and that of the audience. I want to close with one final question that we ask all our guests. Everyone is extraordinary. You are extraordinary. How do you defy being ordinary in your life?
That's a good question. So I defy being ordinary in my life? Yeah, I think I'll answer it. Not to be too long-winded, but I think it goes back to when I talked about that 20-year-old that maybe doesn't have kids. Like someone come on your DM, it changes, right? I chased the watches and the cars and the things, and now so I think you always have those different pieces, and those things drive some people. For me, it's now 100% the family, right? And like those experiences, those things, like being able to have that luxury of some time and some experiences and travel. I think that's all that you kind of get in life. And I think everyone is extraordinary in their own right, and it's just kind of getting the courage to kind of go and doing that. And I think that's why I do these podcasts. I don't think I'm getting a check from you, but I'll take one, right? But we don't make money doing this stuff, right? But I think there's an obligation to serve and to share, because there's someone on the other end listening and hearing that can relate and go through, and maybe they can get that courage to take that step. So that's how I really kind of frame it up now. To my pursuit of trying to be extraordinary is just to try to get more people to kind of go through and just follow the passions and take chances and grow and learn and keep that curiosity going. Remember how it was when you were a kid. Like if you were, we didn't know bounds. We didn't know that things could happen. And I still firmly believe that's how it is. There's not a limit of anything you can do. It's just getting out, as you say, in between your two ears and having that courage to take a chance.
Jeremy, I appreciate you. I appreciate your story, and I absolutely appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Let's go. Yeah, make it look easy. Hey, stand up.
Thank you for listening to The Ryan Hanley Show. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a comment or review wherever you listen to podcasts.
Came in a thing for me. I never switched up, no change in me. The only thing changing is